Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
To say that someone is lucky, even on the best of days, is probably a relative term. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and basically anything else I can think of in a light and conversational fashion, because that's how we like to do it around here. And if you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, and I mean, we hope that you would, you're listening to us right now, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts, be it Amazon, Google, Apple, Spotify, it's all good. And you can also find every single one of our episodes archived over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. Also, we'd really appreciate it if you'd follow us on social media. You can do that on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, either at In the Seats or at It's Podcast One for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and probably most importantly, would you do us the kindness of visiting us over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest movie news, reviews from the worlds of VOD, on demand, theatrical, where there is theatrical, streaming, and anything else we can think of. Because we work hard, and we like talking about the moving image as much as you like reading about the moving image. So please come join us. But on this one, we are getting back into the streaming world. We're looking at a movie that is new to Shudder. And it's a great, by the way, if you don't have Shudder, Shudder is a great service for all you horror fans out there. A measly $4.99 a month. I do highly recommend it. But we are looking at the film Lucky, which is about a suburban woman who works from home, or something we're all used to these days, who finds herself being stalked by this menacing, threatening figure who keeps coming back to her house every night, and no one around her wants to help her, and no one's believing her, and it's very much it's very much a commentary on not just a lot of the grief that women have to go through when it comes to creepy guys getting up into their space and doing things that they shouldn't, but also it makes for a really effective sort of locked-in horror movie where we can really buy into this struggle, and we can buy into the whole journey that we're on. And we were fortunate enough to talk with director Natasha Kermani and also with star and writer Brea Grant about the film, and just not only about the idea for the film, but how it all got started and its the feminist undertones to it, but just sort of making a horror movie and trying to make something that is saying something but entertaining all at the same time. And I hope you enjoy our talk, because I certainly know that I did. All right. Well, I mean, obviously, first off, Natasha, Brea, I just want to say thank you so much for the time. I genuinely appreciate you having me on. And I just finished the movie, and I really enjoyed it. It really, it felt like I mean, I guess I'm saying this as the straight white guy who's a bit clueless, but it felt like the female experience sort of encaptured in a horror movie in many ways. And I love how it kind of plays on so many of those tropes in a very sort of deadpan and almost funny way. And and I'm kind of curious, what was the ultimate inspiration sort of kickoff for the story?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I'll let Brea. Yeah, she wrote it.
Yeah. I mean, I think you kind of said it. I mean, I think it is, living every day in a culture that has a lot of violence against women, and it's sort of taking that idea and running with it and making it even more visceral and obviously heightened and a little surreal.
Because it really, I think as a viewer, it almost caught me off guard, just sort of because it was playing normally, and then there was sort of that initial reveal of, well, yeah, it was of course it was the guy who was outside the house trying to kill you. Why is that strange? Like, was the purpose or the drive of it to have a lot of deadpan in with the horror as well?
I mean, yeah, I mean, and Natasha can talk to that about the tone much more, but I mean, it's definitely written as, it's supposed to be kind of funny, kind of a satire, but also I don't think, even though that feels like an extreme thing to say, I actually don't think it is that extreme, because if you were raised as a woman in America, I mean, you are handed, mace early in your life and told to walk with your keys between your hands, and like they're like, right, yeah, there's going to be violence against you at some point. You're going to have to deal with a man following you. You're going to have to deal with unwanted attention. I don't, even though it is obviously like we're taking this idea and like shooting it to the moon as far as like, you know, playing with it, I think at the end of the day, it's not that extreme.
No, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what I really liked about Brea's script as well is it was a satire in the sense that it reveals the real life absurdities that we live with every single day.
Yeah.
And the fun of that was to sort of ride that line, right, between the absurdist moments that she wrote in explicitly, but then having underlying every image really in the movie, having the kind of real life absurdity and the real life threat dealt with in this really sort of like subtle, again, like satirical way, I think was a really interesting way of dealing with very, very serious topics. So I think it was kind of finding the humor, but then the darkness underneath the humor that was in her script that I thought was just a really interesting challenge, and honestly something you don't see. I don't think you see people playing with it with that many layers and that sort of to articulate real life absurdity in a satire, in a horror movie, wearing the skin of a slasher. It was just like all of these beautiful layers that were in her script that I was very drawn to and excited by when I read it.
And the real magic of something like this is that the horror genre allows you to play in all those different areas. If you tried to do it as pure satire or tried to do it as a straight drama, it may not have worked. Working this kind of story inside the horror genre really allows you to sort of say as much as you possibly as you want to sort of on the screen while still sort of getting the main point across.
Yeah, I mean, horror is such a wide landscape, especially the world that we're living in now, which is so exciting that there's such a wide variety of tools in your toolkit, really, as a genre film. And so I think it was the perfect sort of medium to tell this story, not just because Brea and I are fans of the genre, but that it is a real life horror. That's being presented again, like using the paintbrush, this sort of like hyper expressionistic tool paintbrush that's given to you, by proxy of making a genre movie. And I think that was sort of a really brilliant way to frame, the themes and the issues and the experience that Brea, was inspired by.
And I think like right now there's so much. I think horror audiences want it. I think that I think people, the word on the street is, what's the social horror, that everyone wants to make? What's the thing tackling some subject? But the truth of the matter is, like, horror fans have been wanting this kind of movie for a long time. I mean, we like this kind of movie with like big themes and saying something huge just within the genre. I mean, like all my favorite horror movies have that.
Did you write this for yourself, or did you want to? Or were you sort of talked into sort of taking the main part?
I was talked into it. No, I didn't write it for myself. I saw the character as, when I wrote it was a few years ago, and I saw the character as older than I was, but now I'm the right age. And I also, I tend to play sort of bubbly blondes or like someone's random best friend or, jokester kind of roles. So when Epic Pictures wanted to make the movie and they said, we'd like you to be the lead and we would like Natasha to direct it, I was like, oh, okay, I don't know. But then Natasha was on board for it too. And then it kind of like, I kind of wrapped my mind around it and hopefully did a good job.
Well, that's what I think was so interesting is that being able to see Brea do something that is still like accessible as someone who, enjoys watching Brea in movies, but also seeing it go in a different direction, right, was like really fun. So to sort of start the movie in a place where it's like, okay, there's a little bit offbeat, it's a little bit wacky, I think I'm allowed to laugh here. But then by the time we get to the third act, right, like we've really brought it down. There's a lot of gravity to the project and the themes at that point. So I think that was also another fun thing. I also read it with Brea in mind. So she was always May in my brain.
Now, I mean, how do you manage to sort of walk the line tone-wise, especially when you're sort of in the midst of it all? Because, I mean, people on the outside looking in will read the synopsis and think, okay, it's going to be overtly feminist or anything like sort of in that band, but it really isn't. It is very much sort of almost at least from my perspective, it feels like a cry from the mountaintop of like, look at the bullshit that we have to deal with, almost scream out there inside sort of the genre universe. And you've made that into something that, like you say, there is absurdity to it, but there's a lot of truth there as well. And I've got to imagine it was difficult to sort of know when to lean silly and know when to lean scary.
The dirty F word. Don't call it feminist, right?
Yeah.
No, it is feminist because it's an organic story, right? So we're not trying to virtue signal. We're not trying to tell anyone what to do with their lives. This is, it's a story about one woman and her experience. The tone, first and foremost, is informed by the script. Brea's script has a really nice arc to it as she sort of goes deeper and deeper into this like Twilight Zone version of this experience. For me, the tone, it was actually not too complicated to ride because every scene reflects May's increasingly crazy experience. So basically it's a crescendo. It's a crescendo of weirdness until we sort of get to this explosive, turn from Act 2 into Act 3. And then we have a sort of more quiet conclusion. But I think, again, we also had the approach that this is an expressionistic film pretty much from the get-go. You'll see a lot of sort of like shards of broken glass and mirrors and, the house itself and the world to a larger degree is an expression of May. So at no point were we trying to recreate reality, stone for stone. It was always going to be a distorted version of the world that, you and I walk through. So, no house would have that kind of crazy stuff in it, like it's always a little bit heightened. Within our very limited resources, we had amazing production designer, Lindsay Minnick, who, really was not shy about, painting the world in these crazy colors and, really, really choosing to be expressive from the get-go. So I think it's heightened really from, the second scene of the movie. We've sort of departed reality and then it's just a crescendo to a very, very weird, weird place that we end up in.
Now, Brea, I'm always curious because, I mean, obviously you've written stuff and you've directed stuff, but like, how is it for you as Brea, the actor, to be directed by someone else, especially when it's your words? I can imagine there's a bit of I don't want to say preciousness, but I mean, I can imagine it's a different dynamic, especially because I mean, obviously you can be in front of the camera, you can be behind the camera, but you still have to have a certain degree of separation from what Natasha wants to do sort of on set in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I really believe in having movies have a very strong vision and a captain of the ship and someone running the show. I think that makes the best movies. And Natasha came in with this really strong vision. And from, just the mechanics of it, like once we got the script to where we wanted it to be, like we had to do a couple of rewrites. I had to do a couple of things just for budgetary stuff and locations. But once we got it to that point, I really just stepped away 100%. Like Natasha, there was no part of me being like, maybe you should set it up like this. Like, no, that's Natasha's job and she's very good at it. And if I'm not going to have faith in her, then why am I in this movie? Like, I think we wouldn't have been able to finish the movie if we didn't have
we had so few shooting days. We had not a lot of money, we really had to be like a well-oiled machine by the time we started shooting. So I think that was really, we had to sort of, we had to figure out the script. We had to have a system of trust and honesty before we ever got on set, because it wouldn't have, I don't think we would have gotten through the shoot.
No, definitely, absolutely not. And look, it's a demanding role. Like I'm there in every scene of the movie, so it's not like I didn't have anything to do. And there was something kind of nice about knowing Natasha was doing a great job, and I didn't have to worry about it. I think there's a scenario in which there's a director on board that maybe I didn't have trust in, but I had 100% faith that Natasha was going to do an amazing job and make something really unique and brilliant. And she did. And so I knew I could step back. And I mean, I think Natasha can attest, like half the time I was just making jokes with the crew on set.
I actually think
when I wasn't acting.
I actually think there was a really interesting, like awesome dynamic, especially with the actors, to know that Brea had written the script. And I think that was a really wonderful process, because, they would go through and it was much more of a conversation. And I think like the players who were opposite Brea in the scenes felt, like just even that much more comfortable and excited about the material, because it was like, oh, here's the creator, and we could have a much more sort of like, it's not like the writer was somewhere else 14 states away, she was in the room with us. And I think that was, I had never been in that situation before, and I thought it was really interesting and cool way to work. So I really enjoyed it.
And I'm not super precious about my writing. I mean, there are definitely things that I'm like, this needs to be in the movie, but I view, a script as its own piece of art and it's a blueprint, but it's not like a very specific, step-by-step directions. And so I mean, I'm always open to people saying like, this line doesn't work, or, actors coming in and having their own ideas about the character. And when that stuff starts to happen, that's the most exciting part for me, when someone comes in and is like, oh, this just doesn't work anymore because it worked on the page, but it doesn't work in production, which happens all the time and people deny it. And I think, for me, I'm like, lean into that. If it's not making sense anymore, then throw it in the garbage, because the script is its own piece.
Now, I'm curious about this from both your perspectives, but I mean, I think specifically you, Brea, because I mean, I look at stuff that you've done like 12-Hour Shift and something like Stylist, which is coming up. And this film, it's horror, but it's pushing against those predetermined boundaries of what we think horror is. And I'm kind of curious, what is it about the genre specifically that you think allows for such room to really sort of play inside of it? Because I mean, I can't think of any other sort of genre or subgenre which really allows this much kind of freedom.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of nailed it on the head. Like hit the nail on the head. I mean, I think that, look, I like all kinds of movies, and I love a movie about a big social theme. Like I will support Oscar movies, but I think horror allows us to play with these themes, but it doesn't feel necessarily like eating your vegetables or taking your medicine sometimes. And I think we can go much bigger with them and say something much bigger. And I mean, for me, as a person who wants to see change in the world, I think horror really provides a place for that. And I, at the same time, I also like horror. I like being on the edge of my seat. I like being scared. I like big versions of our world and different versions of the world, and I'm always going to be drawn to that genre.
I also think there's a really fun space that Lucky definitely occupies, that I've always been drawn to as both a viewer, but especially as a filmmaker, which is the space that exists between, the hard border between genres.
Right.
And I think that has always been a really interesting playground, a really interesting sandbox in which to play and create. So, Brea wrote something that is, wearing the skin of a slasher movie, but it's a satire, and it's a human drama, and it's, and it's funny. And so I think, that's always been a space that I think, for some reason is really underexplored. I think people are exploring it more and more, but I've always been drawn to those spaces in between, in particular. And I think this movie is, very much sits in that space.
Well, and it's a movie that allows for layers, because like you say, it's a slasher, it's a human drama, it's making a statement, but it's not hitting you over the head with it all at the same time. And I mean, I think in many ways, that's the best part of not only a film like this, but being able to play inside of it, or inside horror, but also in between those lines, where you don't necessarily have to take out the sledgehammer and sort of hit somebody over the head with the message that you want to get across. You're telling a very compelling and a very sort of real story, but dialed up to 11 very much in many ways.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it has to be about a real person. And I think the other thing that I really loved about, when I first got the script is that, she wasn't this perfect virginal like teenage final girl. I liked that she made mistakes, and that I think, to use the dirty word again, in these conversations about feminism, we often are interested in sort of like virtue signaling, or, here's the solution, down with all men, blah, 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 blah. But her script made me sort of look at my own experiences and maybe opportunities that I myself had missed to connect with other women, or to be an ally, or to help someone who needed help, because I was so wrapped up in my own stuff, and I thought that was so interesting. And like you say, it's dialed up to 11, and yet she's also sort of tackling, and we're able to tackle these, sort of darker, the more the underbelly of these themes, that are maybe not so simple and straightforward.
Because there are flaws in all of us that
That's right.
are rarely simple, and I think that really comes through in this film. And I just want to say congratulations to both of you, because I really enjoyed the film, and I can't wait to see what's next. And thank you for the time today. I really do appreciate it. This was fun.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the great
Thank
question.
you for having us.
All right, thanks, guys. And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.